Designing a good survey is not easy, especially with so many terrible survey questions that we see on a regular basis. This video will help you avoid the worst mistakes and introduce you to Qualtrics. Google Forms is another suitable survey engine, but I recommend against the free version of SurveyMonkey, which only provides descriptive summaries. For this course, you want unaggregated individual responses to your survey, numbers in rows and columns, not a bar chart summary. SurveyMonkey charges you money for access to individual responses. Let's begin with a quick summary of tips that will help you avoid problems with your data. Unless you are surveying hundreds of people, use short fill-in boxes rather than numerical ranges. Collect raw numbers whenever possible. Ignore the way you've seen it a million times. Go for precision and forget about those circle buttons with ranges of numbers. Buttons are for scaled responses, like Likert agreement. Square boxes for check all that apply might seem handy for writing questions, but utterly impossible for linking different variables. A question like, how do you get your news, with square box responses, you get no sense for which is the preferred source. The best you can do is tally the total sources. Even asking which is your favorite preferred source is not good, because you'll never know if their second choice was a distant or very close pick, unless you ask separately about each choice. I get my news from TV, from radio, from Facebook, from friends, with responses with 5 or 6 choices, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, or from never to always. Yes/no questions are typically too imprecise to be useful. Always reword do you items as how often do you questions, with never, seldom, sometimes, often, always as responses, because you can learn how much they lean toward yes, and the never will still give you a no if that's the case. Always ask age and gender. Both make good predictor variables. Education is tricky. I suggest a fill in the blank for highest year of education completed and interpret their responses later, rather than trying to give them categories like some college that allow them to stretch the truth. Last but most important, do not conflate your variables in the same question. For example, if you want to see if men and women differ in their texting, then measure gender in one question and say time spent texting in another question. Do not ask your participants whether they think men and women differ on cell phone use. Good research is not an opinion poll, and the people you survey honestly have no idea if there are gender differences, even if they think they know. But you will know after you analyze the data, which is the whole point of research. Qualtrics is free to students, so I recommend it over Google Forms, even though Google Forms is also free. Let's take a look at Qualtrics a little bit deeper. When you first enter Qualtrics, you log on with your CFC username password. You'll be taken to a screen something like this with fewer surveys already completed. Your surveys are called projects. You click on your projects and you see how many you have. To create a project, you click on the plus Create Project button. Let's take a look at a sample that I've already created for explanation. Normally you ask demographic questions last, like gender, age, education. This first question, what is your gender? You'll notice that there are round radio buttons allowing them to only choose either male or female. Actually, in the last few years, it's better form to create another response. So I can add another response and edit it quite easily by saying prefer not to answer. You see on the right-hand side that you can edit the number of choices, and you can also change the position from vertical to horizontal. You can label the positions. You have a lot of options in Qualtrics, so many that you'll never use all of them. Look at the second question. I regularly watch cable news. Strongly disagree, disagree, neither agree nor disagree, agree, strongly agree. If you look at question 4 on my sample survey, it's I regularly watch the nightly news at 6:30 on one of the 3 major broadcast networks. Again, the same responses, nearly the same question. Question 5, I regularly read the local newspaper. I get my news from Facebook. All of these items are so similar that they beg for what's called a matrix table. So if you choose matrix table, it'll create one, except that the scale points are normally along the top. I can copy these and move them there. Notice when I copied the very first one, Qualtrics was very smart. It knew what I wanted. I can really just start re-editing over here. I regularly watch, and then you could say cable news, and then the next one would be broadcast news, however you choose to frame it. Local newspaper. If you want to see what it looks like, at any time you can scroll back to the top of your survey and click on preview. The thing I like about Qualtrics is it shows you what the questions would look like on a phone, and it shows you what they would look like on a screen. Using page breaks, which are pretty easy to insert, allows you to put maybe 1, maybe 2 questions so that people can use their cell phone to take the survey. To leave the preview, you click in the upper left on Close Preview and you're back to your survey. If you want to look at your responses to your survey, you click on Data and Analysis. We haven't collected any data for the sample survey, so there are none. In terms of distributions, if you want to start collecting data, you can generate a single reusable link to share with people, or you can compose an email all from Qualtrics. Creating a survey for a class project still requires that you apply for an activation form at this link. Enter your identification and choose Other for division. Choose Communication for the department. Supply the other details needed. Be sure to answer how this data will be used with class project, not for dissemination. And be sure to answer no and 1 time. You will receive an activation notice via email. Don't forget, you still have to refresh your account in order to get the link to your survey when you go back into Qualtrics. That's a very brief introduction to Qualtrics. We'll look at this again in the future.